There's a man in the Bible, his name is Luke. We don't know much about Luke, but what we do know is absolutely foundational. You see, Luke wrote two of the longest, the biggest books in all the New Testament. The Gospel of Luke, the story of Jesus, and kind of volume 2, the book of Acts, or Acts of the Apostles. It was the story about the launch, the start of what we now call the church, and the movement, the spread of the church across the known world. What we know is Luke was from the great, famous, influential city of Antioch. When Rome conquered Antioch, it eventually made it the capital city of the province of Syria. Antioch grew in influence and number. In fact, during this time period, it was the third largest city in the entire Roman Empire, and it rivaled the great city of Alexandria in size and importance. There in Antioch, Rome built one of their famous hippodromes. This structure was so large that it could pack in some 80,000 spectators. And what we know is Luke was a Gentile. Now, we're not sure if he was a Roman citizen or not, but, well, he was definitely a Gentile, meaning he wasn't a Jew. And he was a physician. He was very well educated. In fact, Luke and Acts of the Apostles are a masterclass in classical Greek writing. I mean, they are literature works of art. And when Luke sits down to write the Gospel of Luke, the story of Jesus, he gives us a very clear kind of purpose statement for why he's writing what he's writing. And this is what he writes. He goes, with this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated, diligently investigated, accurately investigated everything from the beginning. He's like, I went and I talked with eyewitness after eyewitness after eyewitness. I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus. Now, we have no information about Theophilus except for his name and this descriptive phrase, most excellent. This Greek phrase can mean Roman nobleman or Roman official. It was a phrase used to describe someone of great wealth, someone of great power, someone of great influence. And Luke is saying, I'm writing this orderly account, Theophilus, for you, for me, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. Hey, Theophilus, all the stories we have heard about this guy named Jesus, all the miracle stories, the healing stories, all the teachings that we have heard come from this guy named Jesus. I just want you to know, I have talked with everyone. Again, remember, Luke was a physician. He asked question after question, the how questions, the follow-up questions, the what questions, the I didn't quite understand that perspective questions. I mean, Luke pressed in all of his drive and desire to learn more so that he could write to Theophilus with certainty that everything they had heard was in fact true. And so Luke starts to write an orderly account. And where do you start with the orderly account? You start at the beginning. And so he starts telling, the Christmas story. He starts to share about the story about Zechariah and Elizabeth. And all of a sudden Elizabeth is pregnant, and just not pregnant with anyone, but their son is going to be someone that's going to pave the way for the Messiah. Then he tells about Joseph and Mary, a young girl, and they were, engaged to be, pledged to be married, but then all of a sudden she finds out she's pregnant. Scandal. He writes about the day where Mary goes to visit Elizabeth, and when Elizabeth hears Mary's voice, all of a sudden the child within Elizabeth's womb leaps within her. And Luke shares about, Caesar Augustus, who all of a sudden just decides to hold a census, which forces Joseph and a very pregnant Mary to travel an unsafe, arduous journey from Nazareth down to Bethlehem. And then Luke writes, and there were shepherds. I think he pauses when he writes that line. I mean, the first bit of story about Zechariah and Elizabeth, Mary and Joseph and angels, those stories and those songs, the opening, beginning, orderly account, it had to feel so amazing to Luke. But then he writes, and then there were shepherds in the field. And this is what Luke knew. This is what Luke discovered. This is what Luke heard. That shepherds in that culture were considered, untrustworthy. They were just those people that lived outside of the cities. They were those people where people just questioned kind of what they did because they didn't quite understand all that they did. And they were always, outside of, all of the hustle and bustle of every local community. And so people just assumed that they were up to no good. They had classified the shepherds as unclean, specifically spiritually unclean. In a culture where being clean allowed you to worship God, to serve God, to go and be part of, the sacrifices. And when you were unclean, you were completely separated and segregated. And because of, the shepherd's job to raise sheep that the religious, the spiritual people needed. They needed those sheep so that they could sacrifice them in the temple. They needed the shepherds, but they were unclean because of their job. They were dirty and they were filthy and they were dealing with animals and they were in a constant state of being not just physically unclean, but most importantly, spiritually unclean. And generally, they were just outcasts. Again, the religious, the spiritual people needed them, but they didn't want to be around them. They needed the sheep that they raised so that they could sacrifice and worship God, but they didn't want to have a relationship with them. And so they were fine with them living outside of town, doing their thing, as long as they, didn't have to interact with them. And Luke tells us, that there were shepherds out in the field at night. There's something universal about night that crosses the millennia. Night's scary. Night's dark. And night is when the danger happens. And the shepherds were used to it. This was their livelihood. This was their job. They were used to the predators that would come out at night trying to pick off one of their sheep. And they were used to, thieves that were constantly lurking in the shadows trying to steal as many sheep as they could. It's why shepherds gathered together. It's why shepherds shepherded together. Why? There's safety in numbers. There's strength in numbers. There's power in numbers. And the more of them together, the more they could fend off the predators and the thieves. You see, the shepherds, they were like manly men. They were not afraid of anyone or anything. And so they sat at night, awake, watching, because that's where the danger is. And Luke tells us that all of a sudden an angel appears. A messenger of God. And Luke describes it by saying, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, surrounded them. The glory, the Greek word for glory is the word doxa, and it means brilliant, illuminating, bright splendor. The Hebrew word for glory is this word kavod. It means weightiness, heavy, substantial. And I love that picture of both the Hebrew word kavod and the Greek word doxa, which paints this amazing picture of what they experienced, this glory, this weighty, hefty, substantial, brilliant, splendor, light that engulfed them. And we're told that these manly shepherds were terrified. Terrified. Again, they were not afraid of anything or anyone except for in this moment. And this angel looks at them and says, "Do not be afraid." I'm sure they all paused, looked around the circle, and I wonder, I mean, this isn't in the story, but I just wonder if all of them kind of make eye contact, and one of them was like, "I'm not afraid, you afraid?" The other one was like, "I'm not afraid, you afraid?" The other one was like, "I'm not afraid, you afraid?" And they all were like, who's this angel talking about? Don't be afraid. And then they all pointed to the new shepherd, Zach. They're like, the angel's talking to that guy because none of us are afraid, as they were all filled with fear. And the angel was like, don't be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy. A joy that this world had never experienced before. Great joy for all people. When Luke wrote that phrase, all people, I'm sure he just kind of grinned and said, yeah, for Jews and Gentiles like me. And when the shepherds heard this angel, this messenger of God say, for all people, I'm sure they looked at each other and like, all people? The untrustworthy people, the unclean people, the outcast people? Do you really mean all? Do you really mean us? And the angel said, today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He's the Messiah, the Lord, the promised one, the King. He's come. And this will be a sign to you. You'll find a baby wrapped in cloths, lying in a manger. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, this army of angels appear in the sky. I mean, we go from one angel to a whole army of angels all of a sudden just suddenly appears. And I'm just like, if they were afraid with one, how do you think they would feel in this moment? I think they were just petrified, just staring up in the sky. And this company of heavenly hosts in unison started to say, glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth, peace to those on whom his favor rests. Peace. I think in that moment, those shepherds who had never been afraid of anyone or anything before that moment, as terror erupted within them with one angel, and it had to be on a multiplier with the army of angels, all of a sudden, peace. a peace that they had never experienced before, a peace that this world cannot give, couldn't give them and cannot give me and cannot give you, a peace that only comes from being in the presence of God. And as suddenly as this army of angels had appeared, was as suddenly as they left and went back to heaven. I'm sure it took a moment for the shepherds to kind of get their breath. I'm sure there was a few moments of just deafening silence of all of them trying to process everything that they had just experienced. And then they got up and they quickly made their way to Bethlehem. Now, I wonder, what did they do with the sheep? I mean, did they just leave the sheep? Did they tell the new shepherd, Zach, to stay with the sheep? Did they try to bring the sheep with them? I don't know. I don't know what they did with the sheep. But what we do know is they made their way as quickly as they could. And they found Mary. And they found Joseph. And they found the baby Jesus. And Luke, who had investigated, who had talked with eyewitness after eyewitness after eyewitness, shares with us that when they had seen him, when they had seen Jesus, when they had seen the baby with their own eyes, they spread the word. They shared their story of what had been told to them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds had said to them. The shepherds, as they shared their story about everything that took place, as they shared their story, people were amazed. Amazed at the untrustworthy shepherds. Amazed at what the unclean shepherds had told them. They were amazed at what those outcasts of shepherds shared with them. Out of everyone that God could have chosen, on the moment that his son entered into this world in the form of a baby, out of everyone that God could have chosen, God could have selected, God could have tapped on the shoulder and say, you. Out of everyone, God decided to choose the shepherds. The shepherds. You see, I think about that. I don't know for you, but I'm sure I'm not alone in this thought. There's moments where I just say to God, God, why me? Have you ever thought that? I mean, I start thinking through all the people that are better than me. I start to think through all the people more gifted than me. I start to think through all the people who are more spiritual than me. I think about all the people who are holier than me. I think about all the people that, the condition of their soul has to look so much better than mine. I start thinking through all these other people. I'm like, hey, God, why me? Why would you ever? In fact, there's times where I want to write down a list of other people that are more spiritual than me, more knowledgeable than me, that have a better heart than mine. I mean, like, I want to give God a list. And, hey, God, by the way, I know you. I know you kind of tapped my. No, don't tap my shoulders. Tap these people's shoulders. They're so much better. But on that night, God chose The shepherds. The shepherds. And for me, and hopefully for you, that breathes so much hope into your soul because it paints such a powerful picture of what the Christmas story is all about. Here's another question. Have you ever wondered, well, the Magi, the Persian astrologers, the Persian magicians, right? When they came to see Jesus, they brought the most expensive, the most luxurious, the most elegant of gifts. I mean, gifts fit for a king. Gold, frankincense, myrrh. I mean, they brought the best of the best of the best. I mean, they won at gift giving to Jesus. Have you ever wondered, what did the shepherds bring? What did they bring? Have you ever wondered that? I mean, the Magi, they won in Christmas gift giving to, baby Jesus. What about the shepherds? I mean, they literally immediately left from the field, went and found Jesus. They didn't have time to go shopping. They didn't have time to get on their phone and bring up the Amazon app. I mean, we have 2-day shipping now with Amazon. Back then, it was like 2-month or 2-year shipping. They didn't have time to go shopping for Jesus. In fact, they didn't have time to go clean up. They smelled horrendous. They were filthy. They had been living with sheep out in the field. I mean, these guys reeked. They didn't have time to go clean up. They just showed up. They showed up. What did the shepherds bring? Themselves. Themselves. Their untrustworthy, unclean, outcast selves. They brought themselves. In 1941, a lady named Catherine Davis wrote a song. She titled it, Carol of the Drum. And for the next 10 years, that song that she wrote just kind of sat there. And it was in 1951 that the famous Von Trapp family singers actually recorded the Carol of the Drum. And it would be another 7 or 8 years after that where all of a sudden the title, the Carol of the Drum, changed to the Little Drummer Boy. As I read these words, I thought about the Magi and the gifts they brought. It's what this song is really about. And I thought about the little drummer boy. And I thought about the shepherds. Come, they told me, a newborn king to see, our finest gifts we bring to lay before the king. So to honor him when we come. Little baby, I'm a poor boy too. I have no gift to bring that's fit to give a king. Shall I play for you on my drum? Mary nodded. The ox and lamb kept time. I played my drum for him. I played my best for him. And then he smiled at me. Me and my drum. You see what Jesus wants from you? It's just for you to show up. Just to show up. To be with Him. And you might feel like you don't have the best to give. Maybe you have all the lists of reasons why there's no way God could want you or forgive you or love you or accept you. And I just want you to know, He just wants you. And it's why God chose the shepherds. And it's why the little drummer boy understood that he and his drum showing up to play his best. And when you show up, I want you to see the smile on God's face. And you see, that's what Christmas is all about.